Hi everybody, I'm Jeffrey Driscoll.
And I'm Jim Kerr.
And welcome to this week's edition of 15 Minutes of Fame. Well, Jim, let's start on the ice. Lots of overtime in the first few days of the NHL playoffs. What do you think so far?
Well, it's been interesting. For one, the sheer amount of overtime has been pretty fun to watch. But man, it's a lot of fighting, a lot of stick work, a lot of anger and intensity, and a bit of violence here and there. One morning game. I don't know how I feel about that, but it's been not what I expected in a lot of ways. A lot of fights, a lot of real just anger, and I can't say that I don't like it.
Yeah, I agree. The anger is absolutely there. The intensity is there, and like the amount of scrums after whistles and stuff like that is absolutely amazing. I'm surprised there's not a little more, lack of a better way, to refereeing going on. I'm surprised there's not a few more penalties going on, because then the escalation happens, right? Which I enjoy. Don't get me wrong, but yeah it's kind of interesting. Well,
you mentioned the lack of refereeing at some points, and then there's the usual kind of garbage you get from refs as well at the same time. So it's sort of there's a lack of consistency or a lack of standard of being put in place at the moment. But man, like for example, that San Jose St. Louis game on Saturday night looked like a Royal Rumble.
Absolutely. What a game. Absolutely. Well, for the non-playoff teams, the big thing last week was the NHL draft lottery. Of course, the Edmonton Oilers came in with the second best shot at the top overall pick and overcame the odds, just like last year, actually, for the big win. As you remember, the Oilers didn't win the draft lottery last year. It just happened to be that they got the first pick. So the question that is on everybody's minds, Jim, is do they use that first overall or do they deal it?
I think you have to use it, even if you make a trade afterwards. You got to use it. I've been looking at some of the second or third ranked prospects because I wasn't expecting that Columbus would lose the draft lottery just like they lost everything else. But you end up with that first pick overall again, and maybe Nail Yakupov ends up being a bust. Maybe he ends up being a superstar. But you have to take that chance, I think, and. They also have to be active, at the deadline. At the draft and after July 1st. Make some moves, get some of the key pieces you need. But you're not hurting yourself by taking that #1 pick. And I just can't believe that they got it. I left work that night and didn't really think anything of it because I thought 48%. Come on. And I'm looking on my phone. I thought it was a joke at first.
Totally.
And I was like, oh, yeah, we won. And I was like, ha.
How about the look on Columbus Blue Jackets GM Scott Housen's face? He has not had the best of years, and this was just the cherry on that top.
I liked his spin on it, though. He said, he's still good. There's still lots of choices to make at second, and,
Yeah.
But he's feeling it.
Oh, he's feeling it. Well, still with the Edmonton Oilers, we saw the Calgary Flames part ways with Brent Sutter, their coach, this week. What's the latest on the Edmonton Oilers coach Tom Renney, Jim?
GM Steve Tambellini says they're not ready to make a decision yet. They're going to wait a few weeks, probably for the best, I suppose. Just, let everything settle down and make up your mind. I don't know either way. I'd like to see them keep him around for another year or two because personally I don't think it's coaching. And they've gone through a number of coaches in the past few years, and I think a healthy Oilers team is a different result than what we've had the last 2 years. But there was also some interesting stuff at the Tambellini presser because Linus Ullmark had tweeted something earlier in the day. He said he wished the Oilers would give him a shot with another team. I think that tweet's been deleted, but Tambellini said, he's an interesting guy. But I think that with Ullmark, it's funny because he seems to kind of be on saying that type of stuff at a fairly regular pace, but it's always taken, or it's always publicly taken anyways by the Oilers as like, well, we want a guy who wants to play, and we want a guy who's not happy with being in the American Hockey League. And to a point that's true, but you don't want that act to kind of wear thin a little bit. But he might be on his way out also.
Yeah, I don't see Linus Ullmark playing another game for the Edmonton Oilers. I hope, or I suspect he'll be part of a draft day special, I'm sure. I agree. I just don't know where you play him. A guy with that kind of talent, I just don't know where you put him in the lineup, especially if we're drafting another forward and a guy maybe like Yakupov. I have no clue where you put Omark at this point. With Tom Rennie, I agree. I'd like to see him stay around for another year or two at the very least. He's actually really good for this team. You can't look at how the record reflects upon him. Listen, unless we can get a guy like Dan Bylsma out of Pittsburgh, there's no point switching coaches. There just isn't. Tom Rennie is one of the best coaches in the world, and we might as well hold on to him, I think. So.
One of the best in the world.
I think so. I really do.
Boy.
I think some of the stuff that he's done with New York and some other teams, I think he's been. I think he's one of the best, especially for this young team. That's for sure.
A vote of confidence from 15 Minutes of Fame's Jeffrey Driscoll.
That's right. I think he can put that on his resume when he goes in to go for another contract this year. Well, there were no apologies from the Oilers brass this week. In fact, they looked pretty happy. But the Toronto Maple Leafs apologized to their fans. The Leafs were 6th in February before losing 15 of 17. What did Jeff Driscoll's favorite GM, Brian Burke, have to say?
Well, I hope you noticed that he had the tie done up for the entire thing.
Amazing.
Because I noticed that, and,
yes.
I knew if he had the tie undone, you wouldn't accept a word he said.
Exactly. I wouldn't take it seriously.
Yeah, but he said, he's not going to change his style of play. He said he and Ron Wilson differed on what style of play wins hockey games. But, they apologized. They said, you deserve better than this, Maple Leaf fans, or the companies who buy the tickets or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
He said goaltending and size are two things they need to address. Their goaltending was horrific this year.
It was.
Apart from that, apart from a late season collapse, they were actually a pretty good team. But can't say I didn't enjoy seeing them fall like that. But it was just interesting to see the apologies now that they have the longest playoff drought in the NHL with Florida back in the postseason for the first time since Y2K. But very interesting to see the Maple Leafs come out and apologize like that. They sent a letter to season ticket holders. I think they posted it on the website, and then Brian Burke had to go out there and face the media and echo all the same stuff.
Well, on that note, Jim, do you think it was do you think that was a maneuver in him trying to save his career there?
I think he was just, the boss apologizes, so you come out and apologize too.
Yeah, all right. Well, the Hockey World Championships get going in a bit here. Lots of good Canadians who are sitting outside the playoffs, including a few Oilers, Jim.
Yeah, 30 goal scorers like Perry, Tavares, Evander Kane, Cam Ward's in net, another 30 goal scorer in Jordan Eberle.
Yeah.
The Nuge suiting up. Devin Dubnik's going to be there. Should be a lot of fun. Looks like they have a pretty good team, and it's always nice when the national team can perform well and hopefully win at a tournament like this, even if it's not the number one tournament on our minds. It's still I like to see the Canadians turn out like that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I love watching the World Championships. Interesting that Captain Canada himself, Ryan Smith, even for maybe a fourth line role, isn't included there.
Maybe. I mean, he's
a little too old now, eh?
Yeah, maybe he needs the rest.
Okay, fair enough. Interesting note from Major League Baseball this week. The head of the Players Union was giving a talk and said that steroids or PEDs shouldn't keep a player from the Hall of Fame. Interesting talk there.
Yeah, he said it was just his own opinion, of course,
wow.
But I'm sure the PA wouldn't be too against the idea. He said, quote, "It's a museum," which is fair.
Yeah.
And he'd be fine with putting a little note or an asterisk next to a guy who's been accused of or proven to have used performance-enhancing drugs or steroids or gambled or whatever it is. I'm not totally against that because there's a whole era of baseball players and still to this day admitted PED users or admitted steroid users or guys who clearly used or are you going to keep Alex Rodriguez out of there?
That's exactly it.
Because he's admitted to it, so you you sort of have no choice. But it's almost a bit of a joke that they that they don't have these guys in there, because it's like they're pretending that Mark McGuire was the only guy.
Yeah.
You know, no.
No.
Like, if he didn't take steroids, he might have been the only guy not to take steroids in that era.
Exactly. Yeah. There's so many that are in there already that have taken steroids. I agree. I think the museum quote is absolutely fantastic. So,
yeah.
But maybe that clears the way for Pete Rose as well, which would be.
You mentioned that too. Yeah. Really, if the Hall of Fame isn't about your overall character.
Yeah.
It's about what you did playing baseball.
That's right. No, that's fair. I like it. Well, we're going to move on to the Gabbies now, folks. He's a good and bad by you. Let's start with a good to Marty Brodeur, one of my favorite goaltenders of all time. Notched his 100th career playoff win on Friday with a 3-2 victory over the Panthers. Pretty impressive. But he's still about 50 back of Patrick Waugh in that category. That's 3 more Stanley Cups plus another postseason. But did you see Jimmy Marty Brodeur did a couple of kick saves, a couple of 90s style stand-up kick saves in that game. Loved it.
Looking like NHL '94.
Oh, it's fantastic.
I watched it in standard definition just to get that old feeling back.
Nice.
Yeah. Oh, is that? Where's the puck?
Can't really see it.
How about a good to former Arsenal striker Thierry Henry, who became the first player in MLS history to win 3 straight Player of the Week awards. The New York Red Bulls frontman had 7 goals and 3 assists during a 3-game win streak. Nothing this past weekend, so that runs over. But he led his team last year with 14 goals. They already got 7.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Pretty good.
Yeah, that's not bad at all. A good to the NFL. We've talked about this a bunch of times on 15 Minutes of Fame. Good to the NFL for sticking to its guns on the New Orleans Saints bounty program suspensions. The league rejected the appeals of coach Sean Payton, assistant coach Joe Vitt, and GM Mickey Loomis this week. That means Payton will miss the entire season. Gotta wonder what we'll see once the players start to fall. We've talked about this before, Jim. The NFL must have really good proof on all this stuff. And you're right. The players are just the next step here.
Yeah, well, there was audio of the coach that actually kind of ran the program, and one of his pregame speeches, like, kill the head and all this stuff.
Oh, wow.
Some of it sounded like just kind of, motivational talk, but some of it you're kind of like, exactly. I'm a bit uncomfortable. A bad this week to Lamar Odom.
Definitely.
He parted ways with the Dallas Mavericks this past week. There were reports of fights between him and the owner, Cuban, and even him and Dirk. But at the end of the day, I think he never wanted to leave the LA Lakers. He was upset when they tried to package him in a deal. Then he kind of demanded a trade, but I don't think he actually wanted a trade. But you know what? It's hard keeping up with those Kardashians, isn't it?
No, very nice, Jim. I like that. Poor Mr. Kardashian. How about a bad to the Lingerie Football League, Jim, who is a favorite of ours here on 15 Minutes of Fame? Though there is a silver lining coming up. The league is suspending its operations, unfortunately, in the U.S. until April of 2013. However, they're going to do it so they can focus on expanding to Canada.
Woo!
There we go.
I mean, we'll see. I haven't heard anything about the Edmonton team in a while.
That's right. We'll see how it goes.
Unless it's slated for the fall, they're kind of running out of time here.
That's right.
Finally, a bad to Miami Heat star Dwyane Wade. He got caught up in a bit of controvery last week and then a bit of damage control.
Yeah.
I think he was asked about whether or not players should be paid to play in the Olympics. And, sometimes you get asked the question out of the blue, you answer the question, and that becomes the story.
Right.
And I think that's what happened here, because he said, yes, they should. And he thinks that, players that play in the Olympics, they don't get the rest that they would get in a non-Olympic year, and yeah, they should be paid. Later clarified those comments, but I mean,
yeah,
come on, man.
And that's exactly it.
Just avoid the whole thing by saying no, I love my country.
And that's the right answer, and he knew the right answer too. Dwyane Wade is actually a pretty good talker. Like he knows how to do the spin control here, but that's in the future. Here is he'll probably, I don't know, show up wearing like a tracksuit of just or American, like the flag, the stars and the stripes. I'm sure you'll probably see that in the future. The punchline this week, folks, is a fellow by the name of Clayton Baker, who took in last week's Masters tournament at Augusta, Jim.
Apparently, the 40-year-old tried to fill his cup with sand while everyone was celebrating Bubba's big win.
Yes.
He got onto the course, tried to fill his cup in the bunker. Security spotted him. He took off. Reports say he'd had a little bit to drink.
Oh, I should hope so.
Yeah, and you know what? The sad part is, didn't even get any sand in his cup.
No sand. That is too bad. Oh, well.
Yeah, that's a tough break.
Exactly. Well, folks, that's our 15 Minutes of Fame up for this week. Join us again next week when we get a whole new 15 Minutes of Fame. In the meantime, I am, as always, yours, Jeffrey Driscoll.
And I'm sometimes yours, Jim Kerr.
Have a good week, folks.